You wake up every morning feeling like you've been hit by a truck, dragging yourself through another day that feels eerily similar to the one before, and deep down you know something fundamental is broken in your life, but you can't quite put your finger on what it is. This relentless exhaustion isn't just about needing more sleep or drinking another cup of coffee. It's a symptom of something much deeper that's slowly eating away at your soul. And today, I'm going to share with you the ancient wisdom of Minamoto no Yoshitsune, a legendary Japanese warrior and philosopher whose teachings on spiritual energy and life force can completely transform how you approach your daily existence. If you've been feeling drained, unmotivated, and spiritually empty despite getting adequate rest, then what you're about to discover will change everything you thought you knew about true vitality and inner strength. Before we dive into these life-changing insights, I want you to hit that like button if you've ever felt this crushing exhaustion that no amount of sleep seems to cure. Subscribe to this channel if you're ready to reclaim your spiritual energy, and drop a comment telling me what time of day you feel most drained, because your answer might reveal exactly what's stealing your life force. Let me tell you about Sarah, a marketing executive who came to me 6 months ago completely desperate and at the end of her rope. Despite sleeping 8 hours every night, taking vitamins, exercising regularly, and doing everything the wellness industry told her to do, she woke up every single morning feeling like she had been running marathons in her sleep. Her days were a blur of coffee, forced smiles at work, and collapsing on her couch every evening, wondering why she felt so disconnected from any sense of purpose or joy. Sarah's story isn't unique. In fact, it's the reality for millions of people who are unknowingly caught in what Minamoto no Yoshitsune called the cycle of spiritual depletion, a state where your soul becomes so disconnected from its true source of energy that your physical body begins to mirror that emptiness. Yoshitsune, who lived in 12th century Japan during one of the most turbulent periods in Japanese history, understood something about human energy that modern science is only beginning to discover, that our physical vitality is directly connected to our spiritual alignment. And when we live out of harmony with our deepest values and purposes, our life force literally begins to drain away. The fascinating thing about Yoshitsune is that despite facing incredible external challenges, including betrayal by his own brother, political exile, and constant warfare, he maintained an almost supernatural level of energy and focus throughout his life. Historical accounts describe him as someone who could fight all day, strategize all night, and still wake up with clarity and vigor that amazed even his closest allies. This wasn't because he had superior genetics or secret energy drinks. It was because he had mastered what he called the principle of aligned action, the understanding that when your daily activities serve your deepest values and connect you to something greater than yourself, you tap into an inexhaustible source of spiritual energy that fuels both your body and your soul. Modern neuroscience is actually validating what Yoshitsune taught 8 centuries ago. Researchers have discovered that people who live in alignment with their core values show measurably different brain activity, better stress hormone regulation, and significantly higher levels of sustained energy throughout the day. But here's where most people get it completely wrong when they try to fix their energy problems. They focus exclusively on the physical symptoms, trying to optimize their sleep schedules, upgrade their diets, or add more supplements to their daily routine, while completely ignoring the spiritual root cause of their exhaustion. Yoshitsune taught that this approach is like trying to fill a bucket that has holes in the bottom. You can pour in all the physical remedies you want, but if your soul is leaking energy through misalignment, you'll never feel truly energized. The first hole that drains most people's spiritual energy is what Yoshitsune called purposeless action, engaging in activities day after day that have no connection to your deeper mission in life. When you spend 8 to 10 hours daily doing work that feels meaningless, maintaining relationships that don't nourish you, or pursuing goals that someone else told you were important, your soul begins to protest by withdrawing its energy investment in your life. Sarah's breakthrough came when she realized that her exhaustion wasn't a medical problem that needed more supplements or better sleep hygiene. It was a spiritual problem that required her to examine how she was spending her most precious resource, her daily energy and attention. Using Yoshitsune's framework, she began to identify all the activities in her life that were either aligned with her deeper values or completely disconnected from them. What she discovered shocked her. Nearly 80% of her waking hours were spent on things that felt obligatory, expected, or imposed by others, but had no connection to what she actually cared about or wanted to create in the world. This massive misalignment was literally sucking the life force out of her system, leaving her feeling empty and exhausted despite having a life that looked successful from the outside. The second major energy leak that Yoshitsune identified is what he called fragmented attention, the modern equivalent of which is trying to be everything to everyone while never being fully present to anything. In Yoshitsune's time, warriors who divided their attention between multiple conflicts simultaneously would find themselves defeated by opponents who had learned to focus all their energy on a single objective. Today, we divide our attention between dozens of apps, commitments, projects, and relationships, wondering why we feel scattered and drained at the end of each day. Yoshitsune taught that attention is spiritual currency, and when you spend it carelessly or allow it to be constantly interrupted and redirected, you're essentially gambling away your life force. The practice he developed for maintaining focused attention wasn't just about productivity or getting more done. It was about preserving and concentrating your spiritual energy so that you could bring your full presence to whatever truly mattered. Now I want to pause here and ask you a direct question that might make you uncomfortable, but it's essential for your transformation. How much of your daily exhaustion comes not from what you're doing, but from the constant internal resistance you feel toward the life you're actually living? Take a moment right now and think about tomorrow morning when you wake up. What's the very first feeling that arises when you think about the day ahead of you? If it's anything other than curiosity, excitement, or peaceful anticipation, then you're experiencing what Yoshitsune called soul resistance, the energy drain that happens when your deepest self knows you're living out of alignment, but your conscious mind keeps pushing forward anyway. This internal conflict is one of the most exhausting things a human being can experience, because you're literally fighting against yourself every single day, and that battle is happening at a cellular level, whether you're aware of it or not. The third energy leak that destroys most people's vitality is what Yoshitsune described as borrowed identity, living according to scripts and expectations that were created by other people rather than honoring your own authentic nature. He observed that warriors who tried to fight using techniques that didn't match their natural strengths would exhaust themselves quickly, while those who developed strategies that aligned with their innate abilities could maintain peak performance for extended periods. In modern terms, this means that when you're constantly trying to be someone other than who you naturally are, when you're forcing yourself to fit into roles and identities that don't match your authentic self, you're burning enormous amounts of energy just maintaining the facade. Your soul knows the difference between authentic expression and performative behavior, and it will withdraw its support when you consistently choose performance over authenticity. Sarah's second breakthrough happened when she began experimenting with what Yoshitsune called energy auditing, systematically examining each area of her life to identify where she was gaining versus losing spiritual energy. She started tracking not just how much time she spent on different activities, but how those activities made her feel at the deepest level. What she discovered was revolutionary. The activities that gave her the most energy weren't necessarily the ones that were most productive or profitable. They were the ones that connected her to her authentic values and allowed her to express her true nature. Conversely, the activities that drained her the most weren't necessarily the most difficult or time-consuming. They were the ones that required her to suppress or deny important parts of herself. This leads us to Yoshitsune's most powerful teaching about spiritual energy, what he called the principle of natural flow. He observed that water moving downstream requires no external energy to maintain its motion. It simply follows the path of least resistance while remaining true to its essential nature. However, when water is forced uphill or against its natural direction, enormous amounts of external energy are required to maintain even minimal movement. Human beings operate according to the same principle. When you're living in alignment with your authentic nature and moving in directions that honor your deepest values, you experience what Yoshitsune called effortless action, where even challenging activities feel energizing rather than depleting, because they're connected to your life's natural flow. But when you're constantly fighting against your nature, trying to force yourself into shapes that don't fit, or pursuing goals that don't actually matter to you, every action becomes an uphill battle that drains your energy reserves. Yoshitsune taught that the key to unlimited energy isn't finding external sources of motivation or stimulation. It's removing the internal obstacles that block your access to your natural vitality. This is why some people can work 12-hour days on projects they're passionate about and feel energized rather than exhausted, while others feel drained after just a few hours of work that doesn't align with their authentic interests and values. The practical application of this principle requires what Yoshitsune called courageous honesty, the willingness to acknowledge where your current life is out of alignment and to make the necessary changes even when they're uncomfortable or inconvenient. For Sarah, this meant having difficult conversations with her boss about restructuring her role to include more strategic work that energized her, setting boundaries with family members who constantly demanded her attention for trivial matters, and gradually reducing her involvement in social obligations that felt empty and performative. These weren't easy changes to make, but each small adjustment toward authenticity resulted in noticeable increases in her daily energy and overall sense of well-being. Here's something most people don't understand about energy and exhaustion that Yoshitsune discovered through decades of spiritual practice and martial training. Your soul doesn't actually want you to be comfortable. It wants you to be authentic and engaged in meaningful growth. This means that if you've organized your life around avoiding discomfort, minimizing risk, and maintaining the status quo, your soul will create internal discomfort through energy depletion to motivate you toward necessary changes. The exhaustion you feel every morning might not be a problem to solve. It might be a message to decode, your soul's way of telling you that the life you're living isn't big enough or meaningful enough to justify the precious energy you're investing in it. This insight completely transformed how Sarah approached her daily choices and long-term planning. Instead of trying to manage her exhaustion through better self-care routines or more efficient productivity systems, she began asking different questions like, what would give my life enough meaning that I'd wake up energized to engage with it? What activities and relationships deserve access to my precious life force? And how can I structure my days so that my energy is primarily invested in things that align with my deepest values and highest aspirations? These questions led her to make changes that seemed counterintuitive at first. She actually added more challenging projects to her work schedule, but only ones that connected to causes she cared about. She reduced her social calendar significantly, but deepened her relationships with the people who truly mattered to her. And she began dedicating time each day to creative projects that had no immediate practical benefit, but brought her tremendous joy and vitality. The fourth major principle that Yoshitsune taught about spiritual energy is the importance of what he called sacred rest, understanding the difference between passive consumption and active restoration. He noticed that warriors who spent their rest time in meaningless diversions often felt as tired after their breaks as they did before them, while those who used rest periods for activities that nourished their souls returned to action with renewed vigor and clarity. In our modern context, this means recognizing that not all rest is equal. Scrolling through social media, binge-watching television, or engaging in other forms of passive entertainment might provide temporary escape from your responsibilities, but they don't actually restore your spiritual energy because they don't feed your soul's deeper needs for meaning, connection, and growth. Sacred rest, according to Yoshitsune, involves activities that reconnect you with your essential nature and remind you why your life matters. This might include spending time in nature, engaging in creative expression, having deep conversations with people you love, practicing meditation or prayer, reading literature that expands your perspective, or simply sitting in quiet contemplation without any agenda other than being present to your own existence. These activities might seem less immediately gratifying than passive entertainment, but they provide genuine restoration because they honor the spiritual dimension of your being, rather than just distracting your mind from whatever stress or discomfort you're trying to avoid. Sarah discovered that her evening routine had been contributing significantly to her morning exhaustion, not because she wasn't getting enough sleep, but because she was ending each day with activities that left her feeling empty and disconnected from herself. Her habit of watching television until she fell asleep was providing escape from the day's stress, but it wasn't giving her soul the nourishment it needed to regenerate for the next day. When she began replacing passive entertainment with activities like journaling, reading inspiring books, taking evening walks, or having meaningful conversations with her partner, she noticed that she not only slept better, but also woke up with a sense of anticipation rather than dread about the day ahead. This brings us to perhaps Yoshitsune's most profound insight about human energy and spiritual vitality, what he called the connection between purpose and power. He observed that individuals who were deeply connected to a sense of mission or calling that transcended their personal comfort and convenience seemed to have access to energy reserves that others couldn't tap into. This wasn't about working harder or pushing through fatigue. It was about connecting to something meaningful enough that your entire being wanted to participate in bringing it into reality. When your daily actions are aligned with a purpose that feels worthy of your life's energy, you experience what Yoshitsune called the energy of alignment, where instead of constantly fighting against yourself, all aspects of your being work together toward shared objectives. For many people, the problem isn't that they lack purpose. It's that they've never given themselves permission to pursue what actually calls to them because it seems impractical, risky, or different from what's expected of them. Yoshitsune taught that this suppression of authentic purpose is one of the most devastating things you can do to your spiritual energy, because it forces your soul to participate in creating a life that doesn't actually matter to you. Over time, this creates a profound internal split where your conscious mind is working toward goals that your soul has no investment in supporting, resulting in the kind of chronic exhaustion that no amount of external remedies can cure. The solution isn't necessarily to quit your job tomorrow and chase your wildest dreams, although for some people that might be exactly what's needed. The solution is to begin honoring your authentic interests and values in whatever ways are currently available to you, while simultaneously taking steps to create more space in your life for activities and commitments that genuinely energize you. This might mean volunteering for causes you care about, developing creative skills that bring you joy, building relationships with people who share your deeper interests, or simply approaching your current responsibilities from a perspective that connects them to your broader values and aspirations. Sarah's transformation accelerated dramatically when she stopped thinking about purpose as something she needed to figure out intellectually and started paying attention to what naturally energized her throughout her day. She noticed that she felt most alive during conversations about social justice issues, while working on projects that had clear positive impact on other people's lives, and when she was learning new skills that challenged her to grow beyond her current capabilities. Instead of waiting for the perfect opportunity to pursue these interests professionally, she began finding ways to incorporate them into her existing life through volunteer work, side projects, and by reframing her current job responsibilities to emphasize their connection to outcomes she cared about. Now let me address something that might be running through your mind right now. The concern that living authentically and following your energy might lead to a life that's irresponsible, impractical, or harmful to the people who depend on you. Yoshitsune actually addressed this concern directly in his teachings, pointing out that when people are living out of alignment and constantly drained, they have much less to offer their families, communities, and the world than when they're energized and engaged. He observed that individuals who honored their authentic nature and maintained strong spiritual energy were consistently more generous, creative, and helpful to others than those who sacrificed their authenticity in the name of responsibility, but ended up depleted and resentful as a result. This doesn't mean being selfish or abandoning your commitments to others. It means recognizing that your well-being and the well-being of the people you care about are interconnected rather than competing concerns. When you're spiritually energized and aligned with your purpose, you naturally want to contribute to something greater than yourself, and you have the vitality necessary to make meaningful contributions. When you're depleted and disconnected from your authentic nature, even your attempts to help others often feel forced and draining rather than natural and nourishing. The fifth and final principle that Yoshitsune taught about spiritual energy is what he called the practice of conscious choosing, developing the ability to make decisions based on what will serve your highest good, rather than what's most comfortable, expected, or familiar. He noticed that many people live their entire lives on autopilot, making choices based on habit, social pressure, or the desire to avoid discomfort, rather than consciously selecting the path that would lead to the greatest long-term fulfillment and energy. This unconscious approach to life creates what Yoshitsune called energy leaks, situations where your life force is constantly being directed toward activities and relationships that don't actually serve your growth or well-being. Conscious choosing requires developing what Yoshitsune called the inner compass, the ability to sense which options in any given situation will move you toward greater alignment and which will move you away from it. This isn't about making perfect decisions or never experiencing difficulty. It's about developing the sensitivity to recognize when you're being invited to grow beyond your current limitations and having the courage to accept those invitations, even when they're uncomfortable. Sometimes conscious choosing means saying no to opportunities that look good on paper but don't feel right in your body. Sometimes it means saying yes to possibilities that scare you but spark something alive in your soul. And sometimes it means staying present with difficulty rather than escaping into distraction or denial. Sarah's most profound transformation came when she began applying conscious choosing to her daily micro-decisions, rather than just the major life changes she was contemplating. She started paying attention to how different choices affected her energy throughout the day, noticing that when she chose to speak authentically in meetings rather than saying what she thought people wanted to hear, she felt more energized rather than depleted, even when the conversations were difficult. When she chose to take short walks during her lunch break rather than scrolling through social media, she felt more focused and creative for the rest of the afternoon. When she chose to go to bed reading something inspiring rather than watching television, she woke up with more clarity and motivation for the day ahead. These small conscious choices created a compound effect over time, gradually shifting her entire life in a direction that supported her spiritual energy rather than draining it. The beautiful thing about Yoshitsune's approach is that it doesn't require you to make dramatic changes all at once. It simply asks you to begin paying attention to the energy consequences of your choices and consistently selecting the options that leave you feeling more alive, authentic, and connected to your deeper purpose. If you've been struggling with chronic exhaustion despite taking good care of your physical health, I want you to understand that this isn't a character flaw or a medical mystery. It's your soul's way of communicating that something essential is missing from your current approach to life. The tiredness you feel every morning is actually wisdom in disguise, information about how your life needs to change in order for you to access the vitality that's naturally available to you. Yoshitsune taught that spiritual energy isn't something you need to create or manufacture. It's something that flows naturally when you remove the obstacles that are blocking it. And those obstacles are almost always related to living out of alignment with your authentic nature and deepest values. The path forward isn't complicated, but it does require courage and commitment to honoring what's true for you, even when it's inconvenient or different from what others expect. Start by conducting your own energy audit, paying attention throughout the day to which activities, relationships, and environments leave you feeling more energized versus more depleted. Begin making small, conscious choices that honor your authentic interests and values, even in minor ways that don't require major life changes. Create space in your schedule for sacred rest that nourishes your soul rather than just distracting your mind. And most importantly, give yourself permission to pursue what actually matters to you, rather than spending your precious life force on goals and activities that someone else told you were important. Your exhaustion isn't permanent, it's not who you are, and it's definitely not something you have to accept as normal. It's simply the natural consequence of a life that's become disconnected from its source of spiritual energy. And like any other problem, it can be solved once you understand what's actually causing it and take appropriate action. Yoshitsune's teachings have guided countless people toward lives of extraordinary vitality and purpose, not because his methods are magical or mysterious, but because they're based on timeless principles about how human beings naturally function when they're living in alignment with their authentic nature. If this message has resonated with you, and you're ready to reclaim your spiritual energy and transform your relationship with exhaustion, I want you to take action right now by subscribing to this channel so you don't miss future insights that can support your journey toward greater vitality and purpose. Hit that notification bell, because understanding these principles intellectually isn't enough. You need ongoing support and reminder to help you implement them consistently in your daily life. And I specifically want to hear from you in the comments below. Share with this community what's one small, conscious choice you can make today that would honor your authentic nature and move you toward greater alignment with your deepest values. Your comment might be exactly what someone else needs to read to find the courage to make their own positive changes. And by sharing your insight, you're contributing to a community of people who are committed to living with greater authenticity and spiritual energy, rather than just accepting exhaustion as an inevitable part of modern life.